Janet Johnson with Charter School Capital, and we're honored today to be talking with Mike Morley with ACD, who is a developer of charter schools, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And John Dahlberg from Charter School Capital, and they're going to have a little conversation about charter school facilities.
Great.
Take it away, Jens.
Oh, thank you. Hey, Mike, thanks for making the time. Can you share what you love about charter schools in less than 20 minutes?
That may be hard, but I can sure try. You may know, in fact, I know you know, that we've got a large family. I come from 13 kids and have 9 children of my own, and so we're into kids. And so we're into whatever is good for kids. Several years ago, I was in the legislature in Utah and was introduced to charter schools. Didn't really know much about them. And a wise senator told me, as I was looking at that as in terms of a policy decision, that if parents can vote with their feet, we're going to have a lot less administrative and regulatory needs for schools. And I got into charter schools, started looking at them, seeing that they were doing more with less, and in many cases outperforming schools that were run by districts with seemingly unlimited funds. Now obviously that is something that is debatable, but certainly on less funds than were being provided for district schools, and being successful. And we fell in love with the choice in education. And so we started a couple of charter schools, started doing facilities for charter schools, and they were accepted well and have been successful. My children, at least those that were growing up during the years that we were in charter schools, have been in them, and we've been really pleased with the outcome. So we love philosophically the choice option, and we also are committed to providing that opportunity for others.
That's great. Well, so let's take that to our listeners here. How do you know when a school is ready for a new facility?
Well, we have been in the business of trying to help schools get facilities from the beginning. And we initially started back in the early 2000s trying to figure out how to bring construction and development funds into the charter school world, because obviously it's not available through state funding. They get funded based on the kids that they have in the seats. And so it's kind of a cart before the horse, because they don't have any kids in seats when they're starting out. And so we have funded schools from inception, or even before inception, helped them get their charters, helped them establish a board, helped them move through the process, and had a school, a brand new school, ready for them to start in first year. Not all schools are able to do that, and it may not even be wise for all schools to do that. You know, it really has a lot to do with the demand in the area, what the curriculum is going to be. I mean, we've helped schools from project-based, sports, STEM and STEAM, you know, we've helped classical education schools, and there's schools that are focused on a particular niche that may not be as widely accepted as maybe some other schools. But we look at the experience of the board. We like to see a wide diversity of experience on a board. We like to see them have somebody that has accounting experience, marketing experience, legal experience, business experience, school experience, and usually that's not the problem. Usually most of them have some good education experience, but we like to see a real diversified board with experts in many areas so that they can pull from that. We like to see some experience in the charter school world now. I mean, at the beginning, not many had it, but now there's usually good experience to be had on a board that from the charter world. And if we've got that, and we are comfortable with their curriculum and their focus and their direction, we may take them on right out of the chute. If not, we like to see them have a year or two in maybe a rental facility, and that's hard sometimes to find. but they may have to start out a little small and rent some space from a church or some other local facility. That's not going to be maybe the best situation for the first year or two, but to build a little bit of a track record to see if they're going to be successful. It really is ultimately a business, and it ultimately is pretty risky. So we've had a few of those, as you know, that haven't been quite as stellar, and so we're trying to make sure that we don't repeat those that are not quite as well prepared as others.
Well, I think to the point about the risk, I think that proof of concept, starting in any space where you can get your school open and get the kids coming and prove your operational success and your academic success, that momentum builds and builds and creates opportunity in the future.
It does.
When you talk about when you talk about the business aspect of it, right? The education is not hard. What are some of the avoidable mistakes that a school that should be mindful of as they're building and growing into their next facility project?
You know, to be honest, most of the mistakes that we have seen have been very preventable, and most of them have been friction within the board, within the founding boards. When the schools have the most trouble, it's typically when the board itself gets heading in two separate directions and end up in a collision course with each other and end up destroying what they've created or trying to change direction from what was originally envisioned. And because of that, the parents lose half the parents, or they pick sides, and it becomes a disaster. So cohesiveness on a board is really key. And to avoid that, they need good board training. They need to recognize what a board does, how a board operates, and the way that a board should function with regard to the administration and the product that they're providing. I mean, they're really providing an education product, and they need to be on board with that and need to understand how a board effectively is to run. So that's been our biggest problem. Now there have been, there are mistakes. They can get into a building that doesn't meet their needs. They can get into a building that they didn't really clearly think out what their program was or growth options and things, and then be unable to grow in that position in that particular building, and then be tied into either a long-term lease, or they purchased the building and it isn't suitable for their current needs or expanding needs. So it's really important that you really sit down with somebody that understands and lay out a long-term vision of the school. Have the board be on board with that decision as well. Make sure that everybody is kind of firing on the same with the same cylinders and moving in the right direction, recognizing that, hey, we want to be a 400 student school forever, or we want to grow to a K-12, or we're going to stay at K-6, or we want to grow to 600, but come up with what your ultimate vision is, because if you're in a place that can't be expanded and you're tapped out at 200 kids and you've got a long-term commitment and you want to grow, you've kind of trapped yourself.
Right.
So those are some concerns and some.
And I think the advice that you gave to our audience about making sure that your building and your charter are in sync is really, really sound advice. The building is going to create the culture of your school. And we do speak with leaders who are very intentional, and we also speak with leaders who have that aha moment that goes, oh, I'm a STEM school and I don't have a science lab. that's going to
a sports school and don't have a gym, or
right.
a performing arts school and no place to perform. So yeah, those are a lot of issues.
So if you've got a board that's cast a vision and everybody's on board, what are some of the guidelines and some of the guiding principles that schools should pay attention to when they're thinking about that next facility?
Well, if everybody's lockstep then I think it's important to maybe look at what's the most economical and affordable way to provide those facilities. And, you know, it always seems to be the vision of every school to bond. You know, that's the goal. And, you know, we just come out of a situation not too long ago where the school was ready to bond. They were so excited about it. And they were saying, hey, the cost of this building is too high. We can't really bond because, you know, we're going to be paying $106,000 a month for our facility. And I said, whoa, what are you paying for it now? And in a lease scenario, they were paying $65,000, and they were expanding with the bond. And so they were going to add on a gymnasium and some other classrooms, but we'd already priced that out. And under the lease scenario, they were going to be at $85,000 a month with the total expansion taken into account. And I said, why are you so anxious to bond and pay $20,000 more a month for a facility that you can control and have long-term for $85,000? And that was the aha moment.
Yeah.
But their interest rate is lower than your cap rate. Okay, let's look at that, what that means. I mean, interest rates are easy to tout, but they were adding on several $1 million in reserves. They had cost of issuance. They had attorney's fees that were building up this huge amount that they would have to bond and pay interest on. And then it was amortized rather than just an interest only. So by the time you take all that into account, the interest rate on the bond had very little to do with the cost of the facility on a monthly basis. So be careful that you're not misled by some arbitrary interest rate or some lost leader kind of thing, and becoming so consumed with owning the facility. Ownership is great, and there are some times when it's a good decision. But ultimately, if you own it, you really own it. You're responsible for all of the future expansions. You're responsible for, you know, whatever taxes or insurance or other things, and you may have those kinds of things in a lease agreement as well. But you're amortizing the facility, and the ultimate goal is to own it. And if it's a 30-year bond, you own it just in time to completely refurbish it and start over. So, you know, I'm not saying that ownership is not a good thing, but it's not the only way to do it.
Well, and so what's in the middle? There's the bond, which historically meets the need of about 12% of the charter schools since the inception. And then we talk about a lease. You know, you're in the market. What other options? Are there other options besides a lease or besides a bond that you're seeing schools take advantage of right now?
Well, you know, there are organizations like CSC that have purchased facilities and leveled the lease market and created an option for schools. In fact, you know that we have worked together on a couple of schools where you have been able to purchase the school and put them in a better position than they would have been in a bond situation. It's an interesting dynamic because right now, you know, cost of construction is going up.
And so is the cost of money.
And so is the cost of money, which is hard. So you've got cost of construction, cost of land, skyrocketing in this market, and the Fed just raised the rates again last week, and so we've got interest rates going up, and they're indicating that you know, there'll probably be a couple more bumps to try and cool inflation. So in a market where costs and money are going up, even though we are seeing increases in education funding, they're at a much lower rate. You know, you may get a 2 or 3% bump each year, while we're seeing, you know, double-digit increases in funding costs and in construction costs. So we are in a kind of a perilous market right now, And it is hard. We're struggling to try to balance those things and make sure that schools are getting affordable facilities for themselves. So it's a bit of a challenge.
It's a dance.
It is.
It's a dance.
And, we're in that dance, and you're in that dance, and we're all trying to.
It's a fun place to be, but
It is.
it's work. Because if it was easy, they'd call it PTO.
Well, a while back, it was kind of easy, because the costs fit. Right now, we've talked about this multiple times, that, there is a point that the school can't pay any more than maybe 20% max of their gross revenue. And if costs of facilities go beyond that, then it really does make it difficult, if not impossible, for them to go forward. And there are places in the country like that.
But you're here to help.
We're here to do what we can, sure.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Well, we're very grateful for your time today, Mike. And John, thank you for facilitating
Absolutely.
the discussion. And I know you guys speak a lot on the road, so I'm sure that our viewers will see you again soon. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.